Hello everyone, Twisted Animatronic here, and have you ever wondered what happened to all the abandoned animatronics after Ruin? You know, the likes of Sun and Moon, or as we now know them, Eclipse. What happened to them? They were acting like the abandoned Pizzaplex was going to be flooded with kids the next day. Or whatever happened to Roxy? Was she destroyed by the Mimic? Or does her hidden dialogue point elsewhere? What about DJ Music Man? What about Chica? All left abandoned to rot in this Pizzaplex? Well, we're going to be revealing exactly what happened to these forgotten animatronics today, my friends, so get ready. And immediately, I'd like to talk about Eclipse, seemingly left forgotten in Ruin, right? Now, we all know that Sun and Moon basically have their personality reset and they merge together as one to become Eclipse, which seems like a combination of them both and a much more stable personality. But here's the really interesting thing about this reset. I mean, surely the Fazbear technicians would have known to reset the animatronic and thus combine their two personalities. It almost seems so simple of the fact that all we needed to do was factory reset them and they combined into one. Not to mention, we know that Moon was 100% working for Vanny. I mean, we see him carry Freddy off in Security Breach for Vanny. We also see him working with Vanny in Help Wanted 2. I mean, he's the one which delivers the goods to Vanny in the claw machine, killing off Glitch Trap. And you're telling me that the Fazbear technicians never tried a simple reset to combine their personalities? That doesn't make sense to me. Well, what if I told you they actually did? An Eclipse was mentioned way before Ruin, and the Fazbear technicians knew about Eclipse, but never put them in that mode. Now, believe me, all this plays a part into what happens to Eclipse after Ruin, and I'll get on to DJ Music Man and the rest after that. You see, prior to Ruin, Eclipse was not seen as a character anywhere. That is, apart from one location, and that's the Balloon Boy World arcade machine. And this arcade machine was probably the biggest secret of Security Breach, and one of the hardest secrets to access. You have to solve a secret riddle by taking photos of every cardboard cutout character in the Pizzaplex, and then this will open the way to Sun and Moon's back room. The room in itself is completely messy and shows both sides of the personality, but this isn't the only thing. It shows us this Balloon Boy arcade machine. That in itself is suspicious enough, and the fact it's hidden this deep means something, right? And this is where things start to get extremely interesting. When you play this game, it's a mixture of like Flappy Bird mixed with FNAF. You play as Balloon Boy moving up and down, avoiding obstacles, with the sun shining in the background. When it turns to night, you see the moon face. But when it turns back to the day again, the sun comes up, but it has the moon's sinister smile. This isn't the only secret in this game though. If you manage to snag a glitch, you go into some type of glitchy purple world. And believe it or not, this is where we get our first look at Eclipse. They're right there in the background. So someone must have known about Eclipse to put them in this game before we reset them as Cassie in Ruin. They must have, right? Because they've clearly seen their combined personalities. It's before Ruin. This makes sense. Somebody knew about Eclipse, but never put them in that mode. But why wouldn't they have done that? Why wouldn't they have put them in that mode? We're missing something here, so let me continue to explain. Because this is where things start to get interesting. Throughout Ruin, we play as Cassie, right? And we're being told to go around and deactivate all the security nodes by Helpy. We know Helpy is literally working for the Mimic because they are getting us to take away all the security measures, you know, the nodes. They also tell us to reboot Sun and Moon. That is extremely odd. I mean, this helper is working for the Mimic, getting us to deactivate everything, but rebooting Sun and Moon? Something is off here. And this is where it gets extremely interesting. Remember I said earlier there was only one Balloon Boy arcade machine found in Sun and Moon's room? And that showed us our first look at Eclipse and someone knew about Eclipse? Well, there is another machine, and this machine is found outside Burntrap's room, or as we now know it, the Mimic's room. The machine itself isn't playable, but why would it be down here in the first place? Who brought it down here? But what we do know is this arcade machine and Steelwool themselves are trying to show us that Eclipse is affiliated with the evil dark side of the Pizzaplex, and I'll continue to explain how. You just gotta examine Eclipse's design. Looking at Eclipse's face, it tells us what type of an Eclipse he is. He's a solar eclipse. This is where the moon blocks out the sun, or the moon hides the sun. This could give us an indication of what Eclipse actually is. That it isn't this really nice combined personality. It's a devious part of the moon, and the sun is now completely gone. This would explain why Helpy wanted us to reboot Sun and Moon. They wanted Eclipse to come out. They knew of Eclipse all along, and now Eclipse is back on the scene. they can continue to help the Mimic's plans, just like they did all along. When the moon was carrying off Freddy, the moon was helping Vanny. It was all part of the greater plan by Mimic, or at the time, Glitch Trap, but the sun was interfering with their plans. It was the other part of the personality. Moon wasn't fully in control, so they needed to silence the sun once and for all, and what better way to do it than with a solar eclipse, the moon completely blocking out the sun, and then they disguise it as Eclipse. This means that in Ruin, or at the end of Ruin, they're not going to be waiting for children to come back to the daycare like they said and get the place tidied up. The Pizzaplex has been abandoned. It's been abandoned for God knows how long. And what they're actually doing in Ruin is they're going to continue helping the Mimic and Helpy follow through with their master's plan. This is FNAF. Very rarely there's a happy ending, so now we've established that Eclipse is alive and they're going to continue to help with their evil master's plan. But what about DJ Music Man? And what about Roxy? Well, rest assured we're going to get onto them as well, because they play a crucial role in the rest of this story. You see, DJ Music Man, everyone assumes, was built and made by Fazbear Entertainment, right? I mean, it's in the Pizzaplex, looks like a glamrock, but that isn't the case. Look at this duffel bag message. It says the ultimate party host, and it says congratulations on your installation of your new and improved DJ Music Man. This reads like the Pizzaplex or Fazbear purchased this animatronic. They don't own it. You then combine this with the DJ Music Man we see in The Secret of the Mimic trailer, which is what, 1979? In Murray's factory? It makes sense. Fazbear didn't own this line of DJ Music Men. Edwin Murray did. And not only that, what I found confusing is the fact that Freddy says he's such a nice fellow, but chases Gregory around the entirety of the arcade Pizzaplex? Something isn't adding up here, because at the end, when he's back on stage, he doesn't care for Gregory at all, doesn't pursue him, just ignores him completely. And then I finally realized he really is such a nice fellow. He only starts to chase us in his bouncer mode after we start tampering with the breakers. Once we reset them all and he resets, he goes back to his stage and isn't bothered by Gregory in the slightest. He's there on stage, bobbing, raising his hands up and down. He doesn't care. He really is a nice fellow. Which makes this story even more tragic, you see. Because in Ruin, we know from the start of the game, a massive earthquake happened. I mean, it shows us this on the papers. This earthquake was presumably made by Tangle escaping the burned down pizzeria, causing the Pizzaplex to basically collapse. Now, an animatronic such as DJ Music Man is a pretty big animatronic, so falling rubble could potentially hit him more easily than any other. And the other thing here is the fact that we do not see him in Ruin at all. So it begs the question, where is he? Well, I think I have the answer to that question. You see, Help Wanted 2 shows us what happened to the DJ Music Man. Now, if you're unaware, Help Wanted 2 is set between the events of Security Breach and Ruin, after the fall of Security Breach. So it's only logical that we'll see what happens to the animatronics, right? Well, we get our first look at DJ Music Man, and it's not pretty. He comes slowly climbing out of a darkness, and all we see is his white eye. Part of his face is missing, looks like he's lost an eye. His teeth are completely smashed, and it's evident what has happened to him. He's been shattered. Now, my immediate thought is, who shattered him, right? Was it Gregory, which we didn't see? Was it someone else? Well, the DJ is a really nice fellow. We don't know how long had passed between Security Breach and Ruin, but we can kind of take a guess that it was a while. The Pizzaplex is completely dismantled, decayed, and what would become of everything inside of it? The same fate, right? And I believe that's what's happened to DJ Music Man. He was simply left there, abandoned, and over time decayed. More falling rubble was hitting him, potentially destroying more of his parts, and he was left uncared for and basically unloved by Fazbear. And the tragic thing here for me is the fact that when you're playing his DJ Music Man game, he genuinely feels happiness when you succeed and triumph in his challenges. Even though he's completely destroyed, unloved and left, abandoned by Fazbear, he is so happy to have somebody there celebrating their success. To me, it almost feels human-like. Now, you could argue that that's his programming telling him to do that, but look at the other animatronics. They almost feel alive. So part of me only sympathizes with this giant animatronic. And I almost feel sorry for him that he's been left abandoned in this state. Because as Freddy says, he really is a nice fellow. So as to what's happened to him, he's simply been left there to rot, abandoned. And that's the way I think he's going to stay in Ruin unless something changes. Which leaves Chica and Roxy. I'm not really going to talk about Monty because we all know Monty's fate. He gets electrocuted. He's not coming back. He's long gone. But as for Chica and Roxy, well, their fate is a bit more uncertain. Especially Roxy's, but I'll get onto her in one sec. Let's cover Chica. You see, Chica, when we first see her, is kind of like a zombie. She doesn't attack Cassie when she first sees her, no. Cassie jumps and is startled, but she's more worried about what happens to her.
Chica? What happened to you? You look awful.
Cassie has a genuine concern for Chica. She's clearly completely shattered and ruined by Gregory. We know that's the case. Gregory ripped out her voice box. She's showing signs of exactly that. What is really interesting about this is if you really want to, when you play as Cassie, you can kind of repair Chica. But what is interesting is if you want to, as Cassie, you can kind of repair Chica. You can find the voice box from beating one of the arcade machines and put it back inside her. This, in theory, would mean she's able to talk and communicate again, right? And not only that, shows that Cassie has an understanding of the animatronics to be able to install this voice box. But that's something for another day. You see, now Cassie has kind of repaired Chica. She does collapse over in a bathroom stall, don't get me wrong. But there's that element that she could easily come back, right? She now has her voice box reinstalled. The only thing here is, how would she continue to function without charge? Well, I ask you this, how was Freddy able to function without charge for such a duration? Roxy, all the other animatronics which are still in the Pizzaplex are able to recharge and move around literally without any source. Almost as if something supernatural is happening. Ooh, this is FNAF after all. And I'm not even talking about the Mimic. He's been locked down there since what, 1979 potentially? No recharge station in sight? Ooh. Which leads me to believe that Chica will indeed reactivate in the future. I mean, there's a whole host of dialogue which we solved in previous videos, which I recommend checking out after this. And why again, she is also a nice animatronic. It's all proven in my other videos. So as to what's actually happened to her at the end of Ruin, I think she's left in that bathroom stall with the voice box, but it's only a matter of time before she reactivates. Which then leads me on to the best girl, I mean Roxy. We're a big fan of Roxy on the channel here. We literally have a real-life animatronic Roxy head sat next to me on the twisted couch. You can tell our love for Roxy, right? Same for Freddy. Now, I done an entire video on what happened to Freddy. This video isn't about him. It's about Roxy now. What happened to her at the end of Ruin? That fateful moment where she dashes in to save Cassie. Bearing in mind, at this stage, she's completely blind, but is able to dash in, grab Mimic's hands completely, fight him off, all while not being able to see anything at all. What actually happens? Does the Mimic rip her limb from limb? Does she manage to survive? Or does something else happen entirely? And here's the really interesting thing for me. Once she jumps in and saves us, she tells Cassie to run. And at that point, we're running through all the caves, right? And there's lots going on, there's lots of noise. But if you isolate the sound in the background, you can actually hear the Mimic and Roxy fighting. Have a listen to this. That isolated audio is extremely interesting, and from that we can kind of divulge what's going on. Now, we already know that Roxy's fighting the Mimic, we know that from the start, you know, after we run off, but we kind of get a sense here that regardless who is winning or losing the fight, that's for a different video, we know what happens at the end of the fight. It kind of sounds like a cave-in. Something is fallen or fallen through. We hear rocks fall everywhere, you hear the bouncing of rubble, and then the fighting ends. And this is the real interesting kicker part for me, because we hear this line. Now, upon listening to that, there's two possible phrases which could be said. It could be, I lost, as Roxy powers down, or it's Cassie. Now, narratively speaking, it would be so satisfying if it was the Mimic literally mimicking Roxy saying, Cassie. Because then narratively, the Mimic starts chasing after us, right? Because what has happened to Roxy? She's fallen through. We're in a sinkhole after all. Part of that room again has fallen through to another level. You gotta remember, the walls themselves are made of wood. There are numerous holes we have to literally go through to get down to this room. It's entirely possible, based on the audio, that Roxy fell through something, hence all that rubble and the rocks falling. And the ending part we hear is, Cassie. That's the Mimic coming after us, Cassie. This then builds into the ending where Cassie's in the elevator gets cut, and the elevator obviously falls. I believe the elevator then falls down to the base level. Not the level with the Mimic on, but further down. a level in which we will see Roxy again. And then the second DLC, Ruin 2, will come out. And where is this level, you ask? Well, I'm glad you did ask, because this level, where Roxy's falling through to, Cassie has now found herself in at the bottom of the elevator shaft, is the old abandoned factory, or part of it. Hence why the Mimic was locked in the room of that factory. All the wooden panels and walls look exactly like the old abandoned factory we see in Secret of the Mimic. But as always, that's just a theory. But I would like to put a spanner in the works here. What if it wasn't the Mimic saying Cassie, but Roxy saying, I lost? That would mean that the Mimic literally could have beaten her or dismantled her to a pulp, and then we're never to see her again, or in a further dismantled state. She was already battered enough, under the forklift? Which raises another question. How did she reactivate and get out from under that forklift? I have many theories on that on the channel, but what if it was her saying I lost? Will we not see her again? I highly doubt that, and it's not what I believe. I don't believe the wording was I lost. I believe it was the Mimic saying Cassie. So my best girl is still alive. Oh, and if you're wondering why I've got the eye patch on, it's literally just because I'm cosplaying Foxy today. And with that, we've answered what's happened to all these forgotten animatronics of Security Breach and Ruin. But what do you think? Have I missed anything here? Do you disagree with anything? Please let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video and you watched it till the very end, please hit that like button, recommend this video to a friend, a fellow FNAF theorist, and hit subscribe to see plenty more videos based on Security Breach and the new upcoming games. Massive thanks to the pizzeria members on screen now, our security guards, Golden Endos, and the Fazbear CEO. And as always, I'm Twisted Animatronic. Stay safe out there, superstars.